Now, there's been a lot of talk about rookies and respect and young players and respect. I found an article on the Hockey News, and I'm going to read it to you people because it's interesting. Star player says players must show each other more respect. Hockey's a tough game, and for a team to be successful, it has to be played that way. Against opponents of similar stature, he would do the same. Only far too often this season, this player believes tough play has given way to dirty play. And with a spate of recent ugly incidents in mind, the veteran power forward feels his fellow players need to be a little more considerate towards their opponents. I think guys are taking more liberties now, whereas years ago you had to be held accountable, he said on a conference call Wednesday. Now, with more and more players coming in, there's a lot of guys who aren't accountable. It's not fair. You want to go out and do something, but you can't because you're worried about the consequences. We all have to be a little more careful and have a little more respect for each other. That being said, if it's legal to go out and finish a guy, I don't care who he is. If he's a star player and it's a clean hit, that's what you have to do to win. There's a fine line, and I think it's been crossed way too many times this year. Saturday night's game between the Predators and the Stars is a perfect example of what he's talking about. Predators pest Jordan Tutu leveled Stars captain Mike Modano with a clean hit and hard hit. But when Stefan Robida came in to protect the Dallas Star, Tutu turned and socked him with no warning, knocking the defenseman cold. Tutu earned a 5-game suspension for his actions, while Robida is nursing a concussion. On March 2nd, New Jersey Devils forward Cam Janssen slammed Toronto Maple Leafs defenseman Thomas Kaberle into the boards with a late, unnecessary hit. Kaberle sustained a concussion and has been out of action while Janssen was suspended for 3 games. Maple Leafs tough guy Wade Belak took on Janssen when the teams met again Tuesday night in an attempt to reestablish some sort of deterrent against taking liberties with the Stars team players, or team star players. Um, in one of the nastier moments in recent memory, New York Islanders enforcer Chris Simon, who was an idiot, took a vicious stick swing at the face of Rangers forward Ryan Holweg on March 8, earning himself a 25-game suspension. Simon was retaliating after a borderline hit from Holweg. Yeah, they both were, but Helwig never. That was just was nasty. The bottom line is you do whatever it takes to win, says this player. If I was playing against Hossa and Kovalchuk, you want to try to prevent them from playing well. So, you got to be tough against them. I do that against Pittsburgh or wherever else you play. You want to make it tough on all the guys. But there's a line you don't want to cross. You have to have respect for each other. The hitting from behind is not worth it for anybody. You just can't do it. The punches to the head, it's been tough the last month and a half in the NHL. One common theory as to why respect has dipped is the instigator rule, which penalizes a player who initiates a fight with a 2-minute minor and a game misconduct. Advocates of such thinking say the risk of ejection prevents players from policing themselves. An example came February 1st in Pittsburgh when Penguins forward Colby Armstrong leveled Montreal Canadiens superstar Saku Koivu, and defenseman Sheldon Surrey jumped in to protect the Finnish star. Surrey received an instigator penalty and was ejected, leaving the Habs without their top defenseman in a game they eventually lost in a shootout. That type of call leaves players in a catch-22. Protect your teammate, even if it leads to an ejection and hurts the club, or turn the other cheek, leading opponents to think it's open season on the team stars. Another factor is that the new NHL has forced many tough guys to the sidelines because of the new emphasis on skill and speed. Without them, there's no deterrent against aggressive physical players like Tutu and Sean Avery. A lot of the tough guys who were part of the league to kind of eliminate those guys, there's not many of them left in the game, Modano said in a conference call earlier this week. The game has changed. Coaches find it hard to coach those guys. The type of game that's played out there now is faster and quicker. Those guys are valuable. They were obviously valuable to my career early on, and still are to this day. So yeah, you need to get a rule, and it's something that's been talked about in that situation too. But when you get players like Tutu who can play the game a little bit and be a pest and hit the body and be physical and tough, you never have enough of those guys. But still, you need tough guys to kind of settle the situation down if it gets too crazy. The guy that I wasn't naming, Keith Tkachuk. The date on this article, 2007. That's 10 years ago. That's 10 years ago. That players were having the exact same conversation we're having right now about his son, Matt. I wonder if Dad's thinking, man, I wish somebody would clean my son's clock and teach him a lesson. They might. He might. He might. I can say as a dad, I could see situations where I would say, you know what, somebody needs to clean my kid's clock so he smartens up. Just as an example. But it's an interesting article to read because here we are 10 years later, and all the same arguments are being made. It's a deterrent. Well, I really don't think the fighting is a deterrent because all of this crap was still happening all those years ago. And I'm not talking about what's in this article. I'm talking about back when the fighting was in the game. Like I said, in a video, it was either yesterday or the day before, I said, if you grab a guy and he turtles, now what? And most of these pests turtle. I'm not saying Matt Tkachuk does, but Matt Tkachuk's a big kid, and he's as likely to win a fight as anybody else. So what if he wins the fight? So I just thought it was an interesting thing I came across, and I was like, wow. I Googled Tkachuk dirty play, and that came up. And I was like, and there's his dad arguing that kids don't show enough respect for their elders these days in the NHL. And here's this kid nailing Drew Doughty in the face with an elbow. A play which happens a lot. It was mentioned too about the Bruins Maple Leafs game, which was just grinding into my chest here. That Dominic Moore makes a stupid play and gets called for a penalty with about 2 minutes left in the game. And the statement was made on I believe it was on Bob McCown's show, which is being hosted this week, not by Bob McCown. But Jeff Merrick said, you know, there's a penalty on every play. One thing that really stood out to me when I went to a Canucks game a week ago, and I watched a lot of the play away from the puck. I did. There's a lot of holding, a lot of hooking, a lot of interference. There's a lot of crap that goes on. That I'm like, wow, there's a lot of contact between those guys, and neither of them are anywhere near the puck. Slashing, hooking, holding, and you'll see an official go over and basically say, look, cut it out. Stop. And they do. But it's a penalty. It's supposed to be a penalty. So when you've got 2 minutes left in the game, and they kind of let the teams play, and then all of a sudden they go, okay, that's a penalty. That's tough. Because I saw it. You know, when I watched Vancouver-Boston, I was like, yeah, that's blatant. So if it's minor, the referees don't care. They turn a blind eye. But if it's blatant, all right, now it's a penalty. Which to me is weird. That's really weird. I can't think of any other sport where if, well, he half broke the rule. No, he broke the rule. Yeah, he broke the rule, but it's okay. I just can't think of a time in any sport where that happens. The only example I can find is the strike zone in baseball, which is so weird and wacky. But that's the strike zone. That's not the same as, you know, breaking the rules. That's just an umpire deciding, I'm going to have a big strike zone today. I'm going to have a tiny strike zone today. It's a weird thing, but I guess it's similar in that it's referees deciding what is and isn't a penalty on the rush. It's really a strange thing. Now, if the game was called by the book, you're going to see about 10 to 15 power plays for each team per game for the first while. I think it would lead to more wide open hockey. I think it would lead to more scoring. I think it would lead to probably fewer fights because you'll watch a guy dig at another guy and they'll dig the whole game, and then in the third period it's go time and the gloves come off and they have a little tilly in the corner. But it is a strange dynamic to me that the rules are called that infrequently, or one referee calls the game different than another. I've talked about that in videos before too. Just to me, the whole fact that this is being talked about with Modano and Tutu and Avery. And Avery was a guy too. Avery could play hockey. Avery could score 20 goals in the season. Avery was a capable forward. But eventually, his off-ice crap and just his persona got to be so hard to deal with, nobody wanted to go near him. The Rangers tried to a reclamation project on him, and it just didn't work, and then he was done. And I don't know, I'm not saying that Matt Tkachuk is headed for that territory, but he could. He could. It's just it's strange to see his dad talking about players not respecting players, and his son is being accused of exactly that by fans, mostly of other teams. There are some Flames fans who are admitting it, but mostly fans of other teams. And it reminds me of Burroughs and Kessler in Vancouver, when Canucks fans would say, "Oh, they're the greatest. They're awesome. Everybody's just jealous." And I was like, "No, I'm pretty sure they just hate you guys, and they hate the Canucks." And then the reaction was, "What do you mean, you guys?" And be like, "You're on your own. Okay, I'm not defending Burroughs and Kessler. I'm not." And I didn't. You know, when Burroughs did the whole fingers in the mouth thing, I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh my God, they're on the big stage and everybody's going, these Canucks are assholes. And they're right. And Matt Tkachuk could be on a similar career progression here. And it does have an effect on things. You can still go out and score 20, 30 goals, 60 points. But eventually some of the personal stuff can start to eat its way into your game. And if your teammates really can't stand you, it's going to be hard to convince a GM and a coach to keep you around, because they can probably find another alternative in this day and age on the free market to replace you. Or they can use you to trade you out for a defenseman if they need one, or just for another forward. There have been plenty of cases of guys who were a problem and got traded. So while Matt Tkachuk's having this great rookie season, he's got to watch that personal side of it. Because if he's not conscious of that personal side of things, his career is going to start resembling some of these other guys. He may bounce around from team to team. Flames fans may love him right now, but after 2 years, if his behavior is getting worse and he's getting suspended a lot, and he's distracting the team from their end goal here because he's out of the lineup in important games because he got suspended again, Flames fans aren't going to put up with that. Management isn't going to put up with that. Brian Burke is not going to put up with that. Brian Burke is never going to put up with that kind of crap. Burke likes hard, tough guys. He likes guys who play that really physical game. But when they cross that line regularly, Burke is not a happy camper. He'll drive them to the airport. Just ask Fedorov. All right. Tell me in the comment section below what you think. I think the fact that Keith Tkachuk stated such a thing 10 years ago and now his kid is being accused of the same thing, I think that's kind of strange. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, because there will be plenty of other things for us to discuss as the playoffs get closer, and you can always use another hockey resource in this day and age. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you all again soon.